Whoopi threw up her hands. Because you were. Joy turned on her. Excuse me, you came after him, Joy. You brought up things from 30 years ago. You said the quiet part out loud. And now you want to pretend it was just a conversation. It wasn't. Joy's voice was hoarse now. Why are you defending him? I'm not, Whoopi said. I'm defending the show, because whatever just happened here, that's gonna follow us. You didn't just burn a guest, you torched the whole platform. At that moment, executive producer Barbara Feinstein entered the set from stage left in, almost unheard of move. She never stepped on camera, but she did now. Cut to break, she said to the control booth. Cut to break. Now, the screen faded to commercial, and the room exploded. 30 minutes later. The green room was a war zone. PR teams from ABC were now involved. Lawyers had entered the chat. Mark had left the building. Joy was locked in a private dressing room. Whoopi sat alone in makeup, arms crossed, seething. ABC's crisis PR head, Lila Roebuck, sat at a conference table in the adjacent producer's office with Barbara Legal and 3 senior network execs. Do we have to apologize? Barbara asked flatly. Leela sighed. No matter how you spin it, this is going to be interpreted as a hit job. Joy pushed too far. She went nuclear. Wahlberg walked, and the cameras caught every second of it. Barbara shook her head. He didn't yell, he didn't swear. He didn't even threaten. But the quote, one of the executives, interjected. She brought up the hate crime, the juvenile charges. That's gonna reignite everything. It's dangerous. Not just for The View, but for Disney, ABC, the whole network umbrella. So what are you saying? Barbara asked. We suspend her. I'm saying you start thinking about a permanent solution. That night, Mark Wahlberg sat in a hotel room in Midtown, the skyline dimming behind him. The TV was on mute, playing footage of the confrontation again and again, Joy's voice echoing through his head. You assaulted people on the street. He took a deep breath, looked at his phone. Hundreds of messages. His kids had seen the clip already. His wife had called twice. He replayed it in his mind. Every second he had walked in calm, he had walked out righteous. But the scar that was going to stick, he opened his notes app, started typing, statement draft. Today I was ambushed, live on national television, under the guise of a friendly interview. What took place on The View wasn't journalism, it was a personal attack. He paused, deleted the last line, typed again. But I don't regret walking out, because there comes a point where respect for yourself means standing up to bullies, even if they come dressed as journalists. He stared at the screen, hit save dot, then turned off the light. Tomorrow would be a firestorm, but tonight was just quiet. Too quiet. Cut back to the View studio. The next morning, empty chairs. Hadn't shown up, no call, no text, no statement. Whoopi sat alone at the table, camera crew prepping a soft open, audience half the usual size. She cleared her throat, looked into the lens. We're gonna talk about it. The red light blinked on. The war had gone public. Asterisk, asterisk, the headlines. Hit just after dawn. Asterisk. Mark Wahlberg storms OFF The View in fiery showdown. With Joy Behar, The View meltdown. Joy Behar faces network heat after a brutal interview. Wahlberg versus Behar, daytime TV's most explosive moment yet by 9 a.m. The clip had surpassed 42 million views on X by noon. It was playing on loop across every major news network, and by the time The View went live that morning, minus Joytha, audience had already chosen a side. The broadcast began with Whoopi Goldberg alone in frame, visibly drained. We're not going to pretend yesterday didn't happen, she said flatly. We're not sweeping it under the rug. And no, we're not reading from cue cards today. She took a breath. You all saw what happened. You saw the interview, you saw where it went. And most importantly, you saw where it crossed a line. She paused, then leaned forward. Mark Wahlberg came here to promote a film. He left being part of something none of us are proud of. The audience was stone silent. Even the usual live studio whoops had been replaced with tight anticipation. Joy's not here today, Whoopi continued. She won't be joining us this week. And to be honest, we don't know what happens next. It was the most human moment The View had broadcast in years. No laughter, no deflection, no safe PR veneer. Just the quiet echo of a show imploding. In real time, across the country, Wahlberg was waking up to a second tidal wave. He sat in a midtown hotel suite, scrolling. News anchors dissected his every line. Online creators looped his face mid-fury with overlaid captions like, "Actor snaps, on Liberal host live." Joy Behar just ended her career. The walk-off heard round the world public support was avalanche-level. Clips from his earlier films were being edited into memes. Fan pages turned the walk-off into a cinematic moment. Even his most controversial past moments were now being reframed in the context of redemption. But Mark wasn't celebrating. He hadn't slept. His manager sat on the arm of the couch, holding a coffee cup and watching the screen. "Statement's ready," he said. "If you want to post it." Mark just shook his head. "Not yet." "Why not?" "Because this isn't over," Mark replied. "And I'm not posting anything until she responds." Meanwhile, inside ABC headquarters, the knives were out. Joy sat in a private conference room with legal. Her producer Barbara paced like a caged animal. "You need to understand," Barbara hissed. "This isn't just about you anymore. This is about us, the show, the network, the entire goddamn daytime ecosystem. Opened a file live on national TV and threw 30 years of someone's life into the fire. You didn't interview him, Joy. You prosecuted him. He deserved it," Joy muttered. "Doesn't matter," Barbara snapped. "We live in a country where perception is law, and you just handed the culture war its next martyr." Joy's face twitched. Barbara pressed on. "They're already writing up. The View is what's wrong with media." Joy Behar's meltdown proves Hollywood hates the working class. You gave them that headline. You let your ego make enemies out of guests. "I wasn't going to let him lecture me about the working class," Joy snapped. "Not with his record." Barbara leaned in, voice sharp. "Then you should have done it off air. Not with cameras rolling. Not with security on standby. You made this personal land now the network's footing. The bill." Joy opened her mouth, then closed it again. Her voice was quieter now. "So what happens?" Barbara folded her arms. "You're going on hiatus, 2 weeks minimum. No press, no panels, no posts, and after that," Barbara looked away. "We'll see." That evening, Mark broke his silence. He uploaded a video not through a publicist, not through a studio. Just a handheld phone recording in a quiet hotel room. He sat in a hoodie, no lighting crew, no glam team, just him. Raw, steady, measured. "Yesterday, I walked off a show I've respected for years. I did it because I was blindsided, ambushed with accusations from decades ago, weaponized to score a moment of viral outrage, and while I don't excuse my past, I do own it. I've spent the last 25 years trying to be a better man than I was as a kid. But what happened yesterday wasn't about healing, it was about humiliation. And to those who've messaged my both in support and in anger, I hear you, all of you. I won't do is stay silent while character assassination becomes entertainment. I walked out to protect my dignity, and I'd do it again." The clip was under 2 minutes. It reached 10 million views in the first hour. By the next morning, the war had a name. #Wahlberg Walkout, #Behar Backlash, #Daytime Divided, #Working Class Hero, #The View Collapse OP-EDS piled in from both sides. Some hailed Joy's attack as necessary accountability. Others called it a liberal cell phone of epic proportions. And in the court of public opinion, Mark was winning decisively. Every radio host, every pundit, every podcast from Rogan to The View's own former co-hosts were weighing in. "She played it wrong," said a former ABC exec on MSNBC. "You don't fight with a man who's already redeemed himself in the public's eye. She pulled a loaded gun on live TV and didn't expect it to go off." A Variety editor tweeted, "Even Hollywood started taking sides." Chris Pratt posted a cryptic story. "There's a difference between honest discussion and televised character assassination. Just saying." Jamie Lee Curtis posted a selfie with Mark. "I stand with people who grow." And then came the shocker. Dwayne Johnson reposted Wahlberg's video, adding 3 words, "handled like a man." Joy Behar finally responded. But not on camera, not through the show. She published a Medium blog titled Unapologetically Joy. "I did what journalists do. I asked hard questions. I held a mirror up to someone who's often framed himself as a hero of the people. I don't regret confronting a narrative that's been too neatly rewritten. But do I regret how I did it? Yes. I regret letting my anger speak louder than my preparation. I let the moment control me, and for that, I owe my audience our audience more. It trended, but it didn't heal. The comments were brutal. The press dissected every sentence and ABC. They called another emergency meeting at the studio. Chaos had become the new normal. The green room was half full. Joy's dressing room remained. Lock's audience attendance was down 40%, and advertisers, they were pulling promos until the scandal cooled. Barbara stood outside, her office on the phone with corporate. I'm telling you, the brand is bleeding. We need a public cleanup. A pause, then a sigh. Yeah, I think we have to consider replacing her. Inside, producers were already workshopping rotating co-hosts. The studio was warm with stage lights, that familiar buzz before a show camera crew's finishing setup. Floor managers barking countdowns. The rustle of cue cards was dulled by the anticipation hanging in the air. Mark Wahlberg adjusted the cuffs of his blazer. His publicist had said this would be light, promotional, in and out. Smile, nod, talk about the new film. Maybe toss in a charming Boston anecdote. Easy. But the moment he stepped onto the set of The View, the audience, mostly women, clapped with a practiced enthusiasm. Of people who had been waiting in line since dawn for a seat, but Mark's gaze locked with someone else's. Joy Behar's. She was already watching him, chin tilted slightly up, lips in a curve that looked like a smile but wasn't. That look, the one you give someone when you've already decided how this conversation ends. He took his seat at the panel table beside Whoopi Goldberg and Sunny Hostin. Joy sat directly across from him, fingers laced together on the desk, tapping once. Twice, Whoopi opened the segment as usual, her tone breezy. Welcome back to The View, folks. We've got actor, producer, and all-around Boston legend Mark Wahlberg here today to talk about his new film, but Joy cut in, smoothly, like a blade sliding through fabric. Mark, I've been looking forward to this for a long time, she said, voice sugar-laced with something sour. Mark smiled through it. Thanks, Joy. Always good to be here with you ladies. She cocked her head. Oh, is it though? Mark's grin faltered just a hair. Because I seem to remember. Joy continued, reaching beneath her note cards. You had some ... opinions about people in my line of work. You remember saying, some of these Hollywood types need to stick to what they know instead of lecturing working-class Americans about politics. The air shifted. Joy held the printout of his, quote, like evidence. In a courtroom, ring any bells? Mark's jaw tightened. That wasn't directed at anyone specific. Joy. I stand by it. Sure, but it's about tone. There's a difference between having an opinion and talking down to people. Oh, is that what you think I do? Joy's eyes glinted. Talk down to people. From behind the cameras, producers stiffened. Whoopi glanced at the teleprompter. This wasn't on it. Mark's voice dropped a notch. Measured, calm. Joy. I'm not here to argue. I respect your work, but not enough to keep your mouth shut when it suits your ego, she snapped. The air froze. The audience was no longer clapping or shifting. No rustle of bags or feet. Just silence. I didn't grow up in some ivory tower making jokes about people's real problems, Mark said, Boston creeping into his vowels. I grew up in Dorchester. I know what struggle looks like. Oh please, Joy scoffed, loud enough that her mic peaked. Ivory tower. That's rich, coming from a guy whose net worth could fix 10 school districts. Mark leaned forward, elbows on the table. Let's talk about how you sit here every day making millions, telling people how to think. Meanwhile, folks watching this show are figuring out how to keep their lights on. A murmur from the audience, not gasps, just low, nervous shifting. The sound of people realizing they were watching something that wasn't scripted. Joy's smile dropped. I earned my seat here, she said, her voice sharp. I've been working longer than you've been famous. Don't come here acting like I'm some out-of-touch elite. I'm not saying you didn't work for it, Mark shot back. Then came the pivot. Joy's voice dropped into something darker. Let's talk about your past then, Mark. Since you're such a champion of the people, want to talk about your criminal record, the hate crimes, or did those get wiped when the fame started rolling in? The audience gasped. A woman in the third row visibly recoiled. Mark froze. His face didn't contort, didn't flinch. It hardened, stone, controlled. His fists clenched beneath the desk, knuckles white. "That's a low blow," he said, voice shaking. "Is it untrue?" Joy pressed. "I've made peace with my past," Mark said slowly, like he was choosing each word from a minefield. "I've atoned. Except when it's not convenient to talk about." He stood up. The scraping of the chair against the studio floor was louder than anything else in that moment. "You know what this is, Joy? This isn't an interview. It's a hit job. Sit down," she ordered, finger extended. "No, Mark's." The voice wasn't raised, but it held the kind of authority that made cameras pause. It wasn't rage. It was something older, deeper dignity, with jagged edges. "You wanted to make this personal. You think you can score points by dragging up things I've spent my life trying to make right." "This is my show," Joy said, breath short, "and I'm your guest," Mark shot back. "Or I was." Whoopi tried to salvage it. "All take a breath." Joy waved her off. "No, he wants to talk about platform. Let's use mine to tell the truth." Mark leaned in, voice low. "You don't want truth. You want blood, and you're willing to get it by any means." Joy stood. Now, the audience was no longer an audience. They were hostages. "This is about accountability," she said. "No," Mark replied. "It's about cruelty. You don't hold people accountably, humiliate them." Silence again. Then Joy delivered, the line that would change everything. "Maybe you should go back to your little Boston neighborhood and leave the politics to grown-ups." There it was. Mark's face didn't move, not storming, just ... gone. Producers scrambled behind the scenes. The studio sat in stunned, embarrassed silence. A few claps started, then died halfway through. Joy stood there, hands still raised. She didn't say a word. And just like that, what had started as a promo became the most volatile implosion in the history of daytime television. Joy Behar had gotten her confrontation. That was just beginning. Asterisk, asterisk, the cameras cut to commercial. But inside the studio, there was no break, just raw silence. Joy Behar stood center rigid, arms crossed, jaw tight as if daring the air itself to move first. Her face was a stone mask of authority, but her fingers, they trembled. Whoopi Goldberg was already out of her seat, quietly arguing with the producer just off stage. Sonny Hostin hadn't said a word in minutes. The atmosphere was radioactive. What the hell was that? One crew member whispered in the shadows. Another just shook their head. That wasn't TV. That was war. Backstage, Mark Wahlberg wasn't cooling down. He stormed into the hallway. Mic still clipped to his collar, unaware or uncaring that the producers were frantically cutting audio. You saw her face the second I sat down. She wasn't looking for an interview. She wanted a headline. The studio hallway felt like a tunnel, narrow, fluorescent lit, echoing with the thunder of what had just happened. Whispering urgently, they're trying to delay the next segment. They don't know what to air. It didn't matter. The damage had already detonated. On social media, the moment was already going viral. Clips of Joy calling out Mark's past. The audio spike when he stood up. The walk-off. The silence. It was being cut, memmed, slowed down, subtitled, debated, back on set. Joy tried to gather the pieces. Camera, trying to force a laugh that went well, The audience didn't respond. Whoopi returned to her chair, her face unreadable. "Joy," she began. "What? We need to talk." Joy turned slowly, fixing her co-host with the same hard stare she had given Mark moments earlier. "I did what needed to be done," she said, voice cracking slightly. "Someone has to say it." "Say what?" Whoopi asked. "That he doesn't belong here? That he's not allowed to speak unless he checks every box on your list? You ambushed him." "I asked tough questions." "No," Whoopi said, leaning in. "You made it personal. That wasn't journalism. That was vengeance." Joy blinked for a moment, just a flicker. Something inside her buckled, but she covered it fast. "He made it personal the moment he called us elitists," she snapped. "The moment he decided we didn't deserve to talk politics." Whoopi shook her head. Slowly, "You didn't push back on his ideas. Joy, you attacked his history. You humiliated him on purpose." The audience was dead quiet. Not a shuffle, not a cough. It wasn't a show anymore. It was a public reckoning. Meanwhile, Mark stood just beyond the back exit of the studio, pacing like a caged animal. "They set me up," he kept saying. "They set me up." His phone buzzed. 34 missed calls. Twitter mentions climbing by the second. His manager texted, greater than it's blowing up. They're trying to make you the bad guy. Then another message. Greater than Fox wants an exclusive. CNN, already running clips. His publicist stepped closer, cautiously. You want to do damage control? Mark didn't answer. He was staring at the door he'd just stormed through. Back inside, Sunny Hosting cleared her throat, trying to pivot. We're going to ... Take a moment, she said to the camera. This, she said, voice low, loaded with heat. Names like Padma Lakshmi, Brooke Shields, even Anna Navarro, full time. One assistant muttered, it's like a political campaign now. We're casting for forgiveness. And then came the next bombshell. Mark Wahlberg booked a live, exclusive sit-down interview with Anderson Cooper, scheduled to air the following night. Prime time, no commercial breaks. The pitch. The view and how the media landscape was turning toxicity into ratings. ABC executives panicked. Joy's team went radio silent, and the press, they smelled blood. Asterisk, the Anderson Cooper special was scheduled for 8 p.m., but by 7:30, it had already broken streaming records. People didn't want spin. They didn't want press releases. They wanted raw emotion, real fallout. The truth behind one of the most nuclear moments in daytime TV history. Mark Wahlberg dressed simply, in a navy sweater, and jeans walked onto Anderson Cooper. 360's signature minimalist set. No glitz, no promos. Just 2 chairs, 2 glasses of water, and the burden of everything left unsaid. The studio was quiet, not a whisper from the audience, not a cue card in sight. Anderson leaned forward. Mark, thanks for joining us. Mark nodded. Thanks for having me. And then ... silence. Not the awkward kind, the deliberate kind. The kind that lets tension speak for itself. Then Cooper went straight for it. You sat on The View to promote your movie. 20 minutes later, you walked out of one of the most explosive interviews in broadcast history. What happened? Mark didn't blink. I got set up. I came in good faith. I thought we'd talk about storytelling, maybe some light politics. But Joy, she had an agenda, and she made it personal before I'd even finished my coffee. Anderson, I stood my ground, because if I didn't, if I just sat there and let her drag me through my past for entertainment value, then what does that say to every guy who's ever tried to change? To be, I've said that. I've lived it. But I won't be reduced to that kid forever. Not by someone who profits off moral outrage. The interview dominated the airwaves. Clips exploded across TikTok X. When she brought up your past arrests, did you feel she crossed a line? Mark paused. It wasn't the mention. It was the weaponization. There is a difference between accountability and character assassination. And she crossed it. Intentionally. And then, the gut punch. If I had done that to her on my platform, I'd be cancelled by sunrise. By the next morning, ABC was in full containment mode. Executives met behind closed doors, not in a good way. That afternoon, the official statement dropped. Effective immediately, Joy Behar will be stepping away from The View. We thank her for her decades of service to daytime television, but it wasn't enough. Sponsors demanded deeper reform. ABC affiliates in key markets requested content reviews, and The View, long considered untouchable, was now hemorrhaging goodwill, faster than it could spin a narrative. Inside the studio, the atmosphere was like a war zone after the ceasefire. Nobody trusted each other. Nobody made eye contact. Every laugh felt forced. Every segment sanitized. And Mark. About a movie. This was about a scholarship fund he'd quietly started 10 years ago. One that helped kids in Boston find paths outside of crime, outside of rage, outside of hopelessness. A young man approached him. Late 20s, nervous, overdressed. Mr. I wanted to say thank you. All of it. I watched that interview, and I just want you to know you stood for all of us that day. Appreciate that, brother. And in that moment, the media firestorm, the walkout, the ratings, the headlines, it all fell away. Because the point wasn't the feud, it was what the feud revealed. Meanwhile, Sag Harbor, hair tied back, sunglasses on, podcast alert, the rise and fall of daytime's sharpest tongue, the Joy Behar story, she sighed. Across the cafe, whispered something. The woman looked away. Joy stared down at her coffee. The bitterness tasted familiar now. Her blog post had been picked apart. Her apology to Late, her years of wit and fire and activism had been reduced to one viral moment of perceived cruelty. That's how it works now. You live by the moment, remained the views ratings never fully recovered. Mark Wahlberg went on to win acclaim for his film, a dramatic biopic of a man, redeeming himself after a public fall from grace. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Late-night hosts joked about it, the internet memed it, but in truth, how dangerous it is to let outrage define us, to how sometimes the loudest voices in the room are shouting over the truth. Joy watches a rerun of The View from she's younger, sharper, the camera loves her. She's interviewing a teenage actor, Mark Wahlberg, on one of his first press tours. He's nervous, green, humble, and she's kind, warm, even motherly. She leans over the table and says, with a grin, "Don't let the spotlight change you, kid. You're better than that." Her eyes well up. The TV flickers off, and the silence that remains says everything. The fallout shook daytime TV to its core. But this wasn't just an argument. It was a reckoning. Tell us, Team Mark or Team Joy? Us. Team Mark or Team Joy? Subscribe for more cinematic confrontations, breakdowns, and media implosions that expose the truth behind the drama. Drop a comment. What do you think really crossed the line?